Did you see your by chance? No. So I get to roll. That's right. Right by that. It's still.
People are nice because
I don't know. Oh,
So she said, pre traffic, hoping to be on time, please start without me. If not, Rod is the same.
okay.
So I might have to start without them, but they're on their way.
Okay, so I have 1, 3, and we get out. Oh, we need a Nathan. So we'll wait for Nathan and I guess we'll get started. Ready?
At least in the building, definitely. I've seen them.
Yeah.
It's nice to, I don't know, we sent the slides, but that was nice to have.
Oh,
Transcript is pretty good.
yeah, I think it's pretty good. Oh, should I close that little box? Right. Here we go. It's always. Mhm. Pretty good, right? I've gotten cold complaints.
That's good.
That's why we like.
Yeah. I was like, we're doing our job.
Work remote.
Well, in the like rainy season, yes. Now we're in construction, so
So
we're at city, city hall every day.
It's got AC too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There's the gym.
Okay. Yeah, is that right? For the commissioners.
So we're going to go ahead. We do have forms, so we're gonna just start.
You're forgotten. Sorry.
They just
So we need to do.
a bunch of.
Sure.
That's what we should.
I did. I know, I know people basis.
Oh.
Like
Like last time Deborah asks.
Yeah.
So helps locate the AC's line.
Yes.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Let's go. Yeah, that's Jenny, just sharing on this.
Okay, I'm ready. Yes.
Yep.
I'll just until chair goes up, vice chair. All right, I will officially call this meeting to order until our chair and vice chair are here. Coming in. So do we have any public comments this evening?
Oops. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Seeing none.
Hold on, I can't.
The-
I can't find my little. Oh, here we go. I found it. Oh,
Just in time.
And Rod is also gonna be late.
Road construction season too.
Okay, did we already call the meeting to order?
we did.
Excellent. We've had no public comment. Yes.
All right,
No public comment.
and did we already take attendance?
We have not.
Okay, why don't we do that? Did you guys call that, right?
Yes. So we have Chair Shrubnik, Vice Chair Dombrowski.
He is. literally not in- He will be here. So T for tardy.
Yeah. Board Member Zorns, Board Member Mankey here. And then we have, we have also,
I'll go around.
Yeah.
Okay, Chair Stravnik, alternate. You want to introduce yourself?
I'm alternate for Chair Shrek. Nathan leads us.
Alternate for Bothell, Amanda Dodd.
And Mickey.
Jean Swords.
Sarah Arndt.
Paul Curtis.
Becky Range. And cities and whether you're a member or alternate.
City of Belleville member.
City of Woodinville and member.
ARC Architects.
Becky Range, NPRSA staff, part-time, also City of Buffalo part-time.
Hi, Jerry Hill, City of Woodinville, staff, Government Affairs.
George John, citizen.
Nathan Phillips, and the CEO of the Senior Center.
Christine Scott, an NPRSA program manager.
Thank you. Right, it sounded like we did not
Oh,
have public, and
Sorry.
that is there from City of Kenmore staff. Yeah, there's Barbara. Nice. NPRSA staff. Consent agenda. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. So moved. Let's see. Is there any dissent? Consent agenda passes. Special report. Here's the architects.
Oh, we go right to it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, Yeah, we've made some good progress on the program side of things. We can go to the next slide. That's the our agenda here. So I'm going to move really quickly through the schedule and the market analysis. The schedule has not changed much since we looked at it last time. We're really kind of waiting to see how the site identification process plays out before we kind of revisit this and see where that leaves us. But items 3, 4, and 5, which are identifying sites, site culling, and site analysis, are sort of right where we are in all 3 of those. The main impact that we're seeing is that depending on how things move along with the site, that survey 2 will likely be impacted, and that will probably push out a little ways. Next slide, please. So this is just a high-level review of what you saw last time. When Ballard King was here to discuss it. This is the kind of key takeaways from the market analysis. The findings and the data show that there is a need for a facility, a multi-generational and multicultural facility, that the region participates in recreation and fitness at a higher level than the national averages. Similarly, there's more of a prioritization on spending on recreation compared to national averages. The median household income is greater than state and national levels. Folks in this area tend to have families, so all of these things point to what would be a well-attended and well-used facility that would have a good payback overall. So that's kind of just high level. We're not going to dive back into the market analysis here. What we want to share is the results from survey number 1. Next slide. Which we have gotten back since we were here last to update you. And those results were very telling. PRR, who is our public outreach consultant, put together the results of the survey into a report and has provided that to us. And so we have taken the information from that survey and started to develop a program. And so I'm going to walk you through the steps of how we got from survey results to the program. Just want to emphasize that all of the things that were offered within the survey are all things that came out of the market analysis. So this is sort of a sequential step. First, the market analysis says these things are likely to be interesting to members from this region. And then the survey is a refinement of those general findings that are based on general data and national data. So big level highlights, the 3 kind of large groupings of activities that ranked most highly: aquatics, number 1, indoor recreation, number 2, and youth and educational programming, number 3. And the next slide is going to show kind of the graphic embodiment of that. Little almost too small to see here, but I'll try to read it. So the green bar that you're seeing on the right, the more green represents the more interest in that particular element. So the aquatics recreation, which is in the top, that scored the highest. The indoor recreation immediately below that, and youth and educational programming were both a very close second. It's almost like a 2A and a 2B as far as the interest in those elements. And then there's some drop off to community and cultural activities, and an even greater drop off to outdoor recreation. The outdoor recreation, I'm going to put a big asterisk next to that because that is very site dependent, and we're sort of just going to put a pin in it and talk about that more at a later date. Another thing that came out of the survey was folks were asked to rank how they would prioritize what age group this facility should serve, and youth scored the number 1 and the number 2 spots, with multi-generational being a third place to that. So it's sort of both these things together support the idea that this be a youth center, but also an aquatic center. So that's sort of a thing that we need to balance as we go forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so that first ranking was by category. So it's like all the aquatics things compared to all the indoor recreation, dryland recreation things compared to all the youth and education things. This dives in and looks at each grouping in terms of the individual things that would occur within that and how those ranked relative to one another within the survey. So for the aquatics elements, leisure and recreation pool was number 1. The instructional and therapy pool was number 2. The lap and competition pool was number 3. And then we do see some drop off to the spa and the sauna, and the diving well is even further down. I think that's more specialized. It's
Hey, you guys,
Oh,
you
hi.
can sit there. Oh, well, never mind. Gonna start at 6.
okay. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
We're all seated, so.
Sorry. Sorry, that's me multitasking. I apologize.
It's all right. So the diving wells, oftentimes, it's not always a community center function. Oftentimes, that's more, I can see in a more specialized aquatic center or like a college or something. It's competition all the time. Okay, next slide is the indoor recreation ranking. One more. Thank you. And so here's how those fell relative to one another. Group exercise classes, it's like yoga, CrossFit, martial arts, aerobics. That was the number 1. Indoor court sports, basketball, volleyball, sort of all the things you can do in a gym was number 2. A fitness, we say fitness gym, but it's like a fitness room that you would see with like, exercise bikes and weights and stuff. That's number 3. Indoor walking and jogging on an indoor track is a very close number 4, at almost number 3 tied. And that, if you're building a gym, a lot of times that makes a lot of sense. You get a lot of bang for your buck for you're already building the space, and you can just sort of suspend that within the room or make the gym a little bit larger. It can be around the outside of the track on the ground. Indoor, dance lessons comes in behind that, and indoor field sports. It's like futsal, indoor soccer, baseball. So that's sort of like turf related sports is last at 48%. Okay, next slide. I'm going to try to go quicker here. Youth and educational programming, arts and crafts classes scored very high. Life skills classes came in right behind that. Cooking, nutrition, sewing, knitting, all of those life skill things. Personal development classes, language classes, finances came in 3rd, and music lessons and music recording was 4th. Science, technology, that's like your STEM type learning opportunities, and then computer skills after that, and career discovery, I think is what that says. My eyes are failing me here, but it came in at 35%, so it was quite a ways down. Okay, next slide, please. Community and cultural programming. This is typically like gathering opportunities. So small to medium-sized meeting spaces or sort of small sized classrooms was the highest ranked and interest. Unprogrammed hangout was kind of notably higher than you might necessarily expect. So that's not a specific room dedicated to a specific thing, but it is useful in generating just kind of general interest in the facility. Someone could come drop a child off for a martial arts class and then check their email at, a little lounge or coffee shop type space that would be within the facility. And then a large community room where large community gatherings like movie night or quinceañera, conferences, all those sorts of things was third. That would be a larger space. Oftentimes that can be subdividable. So it serves both the function of that first element where it can be smaller spaces, but you move a wall out of the way and then it's a larger space. Child watch is farther down on the list here. And I'm going to come back to that in just a minute when we get to the program itself. Same thing with this one. This is outdoor recreation programming. Again, I'm going to keep pinning this one rather than dive into these results right now because it's so site dependent that we really need to look at this when we understand what the site constraints are. Okay. This is the first program that we came up with. This is option one, we can call it. It's called Lotta Pool. It's essentially it's a direct reflection of what we saw from the survey. And we basically did a weighted analysis of the information that we just looked at, where the highest scoring category of things, in this case aquatics, got the most number of its ranked elements, the highest ranked elements within that category made it through to this, to be reflected in this program. So that was the leisure pool, the therapy pool or instructional pool and therapy pool, the lap pool, and the spa and sauna. And then what was left out was the diving well. And so, sorry, this is so small, but the dark line that's kind of right in the middle, everything below that line is not recommended. And everything that's above that line is recommended. So what you're seeing is that the aquatics elements, the blue there, is that got 4 out of 5 of the options within aquatics came through here. For the indoor recreation below that, 4 out of 6 made it through. And then for the pink, which was the youth and educational, 3 out of 7 made it through. So hopefully that's making sense to people how we structured that. A couple just quick, those asterisks to point out. Several of the elements that are below, like I'm looking in the pink youth and educational area there, the STEM programs, the computer skills, those have 2 asterisks because even though they scored lower on the priority list, they can occur within rooms that are already kind of earmarked here in the higher, that scored higher. So they're not completely left behind. They can, the space is there. They could be programmed later if those things gained interest in the community. And then the last thing I want to mention is there's some 3 asterisk things, which is a playground and that child drop-off that I mentioned I would come back to. Those things scored unusually low, but they are both tend to be quite useful to the functioning of a facility. So we would sort of encourage that those be considered anyway, even though they did not score super high on the survey itself. Particularly the child watch allows a single parent who can't otherwise get away to take a class or, participate on a group team activity like volleyball or something to be able to drop a child off and go do that. So it's somewhat of an equity issue as well. Okay, so that's the Lotta pool. That's the direct reflection of what we saw from the survey. Not a pool is basically, okay, when we started this process, we were looking at a youth and community center. Taking on the running of a pool and the building of a pool is a big thing for everybody to consider. So this would be basically what those results look like with all the pool elements taken out. So I won't go back through everything, but this is just essentially the pool's taken out of this one. What that results in is both a considerably smaller facility but also a less expensive facility to build on a per square foot basis because pools are expensive. Okay, and then for those that want to have their cake and eat it too, this is sort of the blending of the two. So this is got a pool, emphasis on the A in one pool. So this would be the most popular aquatics thing that was voted on, which was the leisure and recreation pool. It's sort of the most community-based. It provides, I would say, the most broad programming opportunities, stays in. So along with that comes all the things that you need to run a pool, the locker room and the lifeguard area and the pump room and things. But it is just one pool. It could be a very large, nice pool, but it's just one pool. By removing all those aquatics elements, they're freed up quite a lot of space. So then what we did here is we moved some things that had been just below the cusp of being cut off, which typically was less than 50% interest. And we were able to kind of backfill those into the space left by removing some of the aquatic elements. And so what you end up with is a more robust community center on the dry land side of things with just the one pool. Okay, so I hope that makes sense how we got to that place. And then this is just sort of a comparison of those, the colored itemization of the activities is just what you have just seen. What this really adds is the square footages. So you're seeing a 58,000 square foot not a pool option, a 28,000 square foot not a pool option, and a 56,000 square foot got a pool option. At this level, there has been no cost estimate by a third-party estimator or anything like that. So what we're really basing cost information on is just square footages. So square footages equals dollars, basically. And so a 58,000 square foot pool is $3 signs. The 28,000 square foot not a pool is $1. And then the blend of those two, as you might guess, is $2. And keeping in mind, even though the Lotta pool is 58,000 and Gata pool is 56,000, those costs to build, cost per square foot to build are not equal. The pool is more expensive, which is why there's that differentiation there. And I just want to say, to get us to the 58,000 square foot, it is not just adding up the program elements. We have included net to gross for this. So that's the hallways and the wall thicknesses and the chases. Those all are being added in here, as well as some sort of pseudo program elements that you don't see listed here, but would need to be like the locker rooms. That is all included. We just have not shown that here.
Hate to be that person, but is there a rough estimate of what each dollar sign amount is? Like 3 versus 2 versus 1?
We have done that sort of internally, but I don't think we're to a point where we know enough to necessarily share it yet.
Absolutely.
And do you want to take questions as we go? Because
Yeah, I think there's not far to go.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I think there's just one more slide after this. So the last thing we did is we took the program areas, that's the 58, 28, and 56, and those, we were able to make some educated guesses as to what that would mean for the overall site size, just from the building size. So for instance, we were able to estimate the parking spaces that would be required at a 1 space per 500 square feet of building. That's just sort of a design rule of thumb that we use. And then we were able to apply on average for a parking lot, if you were to divide 100 space parking lot by 100, how much is that per space? So that includes all the landscaping and the sidewalks and the other things that aren't just the parking spaces. So we were able to do that for parking, stormwater, and other open space elements, and essentially make a rough estimation of how many acres each of these options would need. And it's 4 acres, 2 acres, and 4 acres for the 3 options. And I should say that the open space requirement, which would include like sport courts and playground and splash pad or other things that we really don't know yet, things I kept putting a pin in, that is very much a guess. And though that is very flexible. So that sort of adds a plus or minus to each of the 4, 2, and 4. Like that could be a 3 to 5 or a 1 to 3 or 3 to 5, something like that. It really depends on how much open space is needed in the end, or available is maybe a better way to put that. Okay, and the last thing I just want to say, and thanks Christine for getting this in there, is this is not the final recommendation. There's a series. This is the process of getting our arms around everything that would be great to have. There's also kind of the inward constraints of a facility, which is how big is the site and how many dollars does it take to build. And we don't want to overshoot what would be too big of a lift to build. We want this to be a reality for everybody. So that process has yet to happen, is to sort of say, okay, what's realistic? And definitely want to hear about what that means to you all tonight. And then we have a community advisory meeting coming up where we hope to get additional feedback on the survey, on the program and the information from the survey. Ballard King needs to really weigh in on what kind of balance of elements might result in the best kind of operational payback for the facility. That still needs to happen. And then site test fits be happening last slide is the next one. And so this is kind of, those are next steps. And then these are next steps. This is like farther down the line, but identifying the site options, the community advisory committee meeting mentioned, and then site analysis. Of course, it's not happened yet. And then deciding what survey number 2 is going to look like. It was originally conceived that we would ask people to weigh in on what site opportunities we had pulled down to. It could also be that we want people to weigh in on what these, or maybe all 3 of these program options, or maybe 2 of these program options after they've all gone through a refinement phase. Okay, sorry, I probably took more than my time, but let's open it up for questions.
Questions?
A member, so I apologize for asking a question, but were the square footages presented, are those for the facility or the lot size?
If we go back just 2 slides, the 58,000 and the 28,000 and the 56,000 are just the facility itself.
Yes.
And they are preliminary.
Okay, thank you. I just was wondering.
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Yes.
And then the acreage estimates, is that acreage for the facilities solely or acreage for everything?
Everything, including parking and stormwater, and a lot of zoning requirements include open space requirements. So it covers all of that. And I think it covers it well, but it is an estimate at this point.
Typical open space.
Everything you would need, including setbacks and
A few questions. On the third option, the pool,
yes.
it also listed an outdoor pool. Is that, so there was an indoor? Is that right? Okay.
That was one of the items on the outdoor
Yeah.
Recreation elements that we put in and didn't talk about. But yes, that's an idea that is something that could be either an either or with the indoor, or an and/or. But yeah, that's something that we could look at. That would be kind of like the Fir Crest Community Center has an outdoor pool with an indoor like gym
And-
Up learning how to swim.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we just, the pool was beginning to fail and just did a whole rework and added.
It's a great
And
facility.
the 2 and 4 acres on the size, I mean, the difference is the aquatics, right? I mean, largely.
It is
And so I guess my question is, I mean, this is my naivete, are those things ever stacked? Like you have, a pool on the ground level? And,
yeah. So stacking, for instance, a gym on an aquatic center or elements of an aquatic center on an aquatic center is difficult. And it adds significantly to the cost. However, there are a lot of building elements that can be stacked. Administration on top of meeting rooms.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The smaller scale elements are much easier to stack. So what,
And where's those, what's the acreage and the square footage kind of trying to compact that at all?
we
or
haven't
not?
gone that far.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
When we have a site, we'll look at, a lot of times there's a site with, let's say, a steep hill and then a big flat area. And, we'll look at 3 or 4 different ways to do that. Maybe the building goes on the steep hill area so that you can maintain the flat area for parking and for a field. But that's something we won't dive into until we,
But importantly, you're kind of saying 4 acres
that
is what is needed. I mean, and that's why I was.
I
kind
think
of looking at
safely,
that.
yes. But
Okay.
like you've pointed out, there's a level of stacking things that you can start to get at that this doesn't include.
Okay.
So you could immediately, let's say, if you really wanted to get this as small as you could, strip away the, some of the outdoor things that are listed here, the sports courts and,
Mhm.
all of that's nice to have, but it's not part and parcel to the facility. Strip those away, stack the smaller scale elements as best you can, and you could get that down.
Okay, okay. And then you did talk about the second survey, possible focus is Bosai. And in that second survey, would we also be kind of testing, bond measure rates and, that kind of a thing, the cost aspect?
We have definitely done that. A lot of times it's when there's a little bit more finite understanding of where we're going with
Okay.
this. So
Okay.
I would suggest maybe
It's a little
the third survey.
Okay. And then the last thing, sounds like you're gonna do some operational costs. I mean, that's clearly not in here yet, but it sounds like there's gonna be an analysis of that, which is great. The site criteria, do we have, because I noticed on your schedule, we're gonna be evaluating. I'm just, have you already come up with kind of what are the criteria or?
We do have a list. I don't
Okay.
think that we've shared that yet. We
Yeah.
haven't quite gotten to that point.
Okay. And what did it depend on this programming discussion as well?
It would a little bit and also, how many sites we're looking at. And I think also the site criteria, some of the site criteria is going to have higher, so we've gone through exercises where it's weighted.
Sure.
Like this is this. So there's a whole level of detail that we're not.
And when would we, as a board, kind of be able to look at that criteria?
I mean, we can share that at any time. We have already sort of developed it for this project. So I don't think we've talked about it, right? Okay.
Thank you. What other questions do folks have?
I just had a quick question. So remind me, I think that there were about 1,000 respondents and it seems like they came pretty much from across the district. That in the last time I saw the results, seemed like they were kind of
Geographically, yeah, I think that is correct. Yeah.
Did the
Yeah.
Did on the geographic distribution respondents, did their priorities differ? That would be something that would be interesting to see.
I'm told that
They're
that
different.
is a very good question. I'm told that we do have that level of parsing out, but we haven't gone through that exercise. But I can talk to our PRR administrator of the survey, and I can talk to them about getting that information.
And even in just like a detail.
Yeah.
Would be great to dive in to make that
And
judgment.
it would be, I think we had talked about having a slide or just a table that shows the representativeness of the sample, against demographic characteristics, basically.
So just a reminder, it wasn't a statistically valid survey, so it was just an online survey only. So if we statistically valid survey is quite expensive, but I think there's probably some value, and I know PRR, I think probably already taken a look at that, kind of just a overall look.
And that's helpful to know that it was there wasn't a intentional sampling plan and things like that. Yeah.
One thing that comes to mind, if I could follow it, Chair, would be, finding 4 acres around here is tough. And I'll set aside the issue, do we want to take on them? to keep taking that on, struggling to get it done, even though the communities really want it. But you could see if one part of the area had a high need for a pool because maybe they're not near an existing one. You could split this function, right? You could
Yeah.
have a pool where there isn't one, there's a pool desert, you could have a community center, maybe.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
this- getting in a little more granularity. I think just politically, we're gonna struggle on location with
Yeah.
one site, because it's a pretty cool thing that a lot of people might want, and if you're living east of Woodinville, coming to Kenmore is hard, and vice versa.
Vice versa,
Yeah.
right? Exactly. Yeah.
Just to comment on that, I think the benefit of that is the phasing opportunities. So you don't have to do it all at once. You can build one facility and then build the other facility. The challenges of that are the operationally, you would double your staff, or maybe not double, you would need more staff anyway, even if it was under one roof, but there'd be more.
I will confess, I was thinking about this site, and I said, if we share a parking lot, and where would there be room to put the building? But there is. But that's not crossed my mind.
We'll go out this way.
Right now.
One of the slides mentioned, seeing what Ballard King thought about the process, and I just hadn't heard of that before, so I was curious what that was.
Yeah, so Ballard King, they're sort of at the front end of the process and at the back end of the process. They do the market analysis, which kind of looks at the overall data trends of the area and national recreation trends, and that kind of overlay those. And they're able to come up with basically a sketch of what activities should be high on the priority list for this area. And it's that list that we then culminated into survey number 1, and then refined through reaching out and getting public input on that. They then come back at the end of the process, after we all sort of churn on this for a while and get the program refined to where we want it to end up. And then they tell us what the operational payback of the facility is. What do you have to put in every year to keep it running? Or is it a break-even facility? There's very few facilities that make money. I've seen it happen once or twice, but it's very rare. So at the very end of the process, once we've settled on even a design, we will have a design, and they'll take into account, how many people are manning the front desk and how much each of those people get paid. And that can be that is a very detailed report that they generate. At this level, when we're sort of at a high level comparing different options, their feedback will be more rules of thumb. And in fact, we just got a list from them of, all of these rooms are very low cost to operate, but they have a high rate of return. So we'll be able to use that feedback in a general way right now to help shape the program, and not the detailed report way that we'll get at the end.
Will Ballard King also be making recommendations about potential operating partners once they do that program?
They are not on board to make, I believe they do that, but that's not part of their scope right now. But if you'd like us to reach out to them and see, we can do that.
And in terms of putting a pin in this, are we looking for any sort of direction, or was this primarily FYI?
I think feedback. Yeah, if there's direction in terms of, get rid of this option, or we really like this option, but we'd like to see more, whatever, aquatics in it. What happened to the diving well?
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Well, so feedback. Yeah.
So just one thing that kind of occurred to me as we were going through the options, if we go with the not a pool option versus a lot of pool options, we do eliminate the opportunity of partnering with North Shore Schools for, their aquatics programs. And I know that they have that need and they've been looking. So that is an opportunity there, an opportunity cost that we might sacrifice if we move away from that, lack of competitive.
Yeah, and there are, we arbitrarily said one pool. It could be still smaller and it's two pools. But everything just adds costs. But yeah, I think the other thing we could look at is the one pool is the lap pool, if that's a greater priority. I think it has less sort of community focus. It is more geared towards swim clubs and high school teams and whatnot, but we can certainly look at that.
When looking at weighing an opportunity like that, I'd want to also know, as a North Shore parent, right, like they're in a budget crunch right now, so I don't know that it would also be appropriate for NPRSA to carry that cost for the school district. As much as I would love to just give schools everything they need, like, so that there's a lot of analysis there, given the season of budgeting that the school district is in.
Definitely. And they are part of the community advisory. Board. Is that correct?
They are.
They are. So they'll be able to weigh in.
They're closing Woodmore, which isn't, I mean, I took some lessons there as a child. My kid did recently. It's not anything to put in a pamphlet.
Well, I would love it if we could figure out one of the two options that had a pool. I think that fits the data. I feel like option 2 does actually not fit the data real well. So that would be my concern with going with option 2. I have exactly the same concern about finding a site. I mean, I frankly think that's going to be a fairly significant hurdle, and I love the idea of potentially splitting if that made sense. I know we're talking about that as the senior center. So yeah.
I wonder if there's even opportunity to work with one of the transit agencies on activating a parking ride. It's just a flat parking lot right now, just because it's going to be hard to find land. That's land that could be used better. Also, they're getting a lot of flack for not doing anything with their land. Like maybe there's a harmony there, but it is going to be hard to find a site. So that's on my mind. I like the third option. I feel like it's a good balance personally, but I don't have facts to back that up. That's just good.
I would just jump in here and say that the city of Woodinville is interested in putting a site forward. And we have started discussions about acquiring land for that purpose in our downtown core. Obviously, that is a process which may or may not align completely with the process that is happening here and the timeline that is happening here. But certainly we, as a city, have shown some interest in trying to find and identify property at about the 4 or 5 acre mark that could serve this function and would serve it by being near transit off of 520 and hitting a lot of the site criteria that we were aware of. So
Yeah, I think that's the importance of having the criteria as we start to think. I mean, I don't know, maybe you can just talk through that a little bit, but I know we're going to be short on time as we go into detail. But
Christine, a staff, we can just commit as the absolute next step is to take the criteria, and Christine can make sure that everyone has that. And, maybe set some timelines for when the agencies can respond. And I mean, I know all of y'all kind of been thinking about it, brainstorming it a little bit amongst yourselves. So
yeah, I would actually, if we have an opportunity to have it be a discussion of this body, I think that will be helpful, not just because I think you may get, things that are different and, we maybe need to talk them out, but it's hard, it's hard to know in the absence of that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to make sure that talking about the dive well, that things like kayaking as a kayaker
Yes.
is big,
Yeah.
and Kenmore has their own boathouse now. That I have a hunch that things kayak related, boating related, like for evening use kind of thing, that probably would show up more strongly in your results.
That's a good point. I think, I'm not sure people would have connected, I can do other things besides diving. Scuba is another one. And you can, if you kind of orient the pool correctly, with the deep end and the diving well being adjacent to one another, you can do water polo.
I probably wasn't clear. I think absolutely this body should discuss the sites, but I'm wondering.
The criteria is what I was saying.
Oh,
Discussing
okay.
the criteria. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think that's.
Yeah.
Um,
And maybe it's when we discuss the sites. I mean, I don't want it to be finalized before this body actually has an opportunity to talk about it anymore. Okay. Other questions? We have a big agenda, so, did you feel like, do you all feel like you have enough kind of direction?
I do.
Tenor? Okay,
Yes. Very good comments. Thank you.
awesome. All right.
Would we,
Oh.
before the second survey goes out, will we be able to preview that to make sure that content or?
Yeah.
Since I think a decision is somewhat's gonna come to some incarnation of this body,
Yeah.
and I think it's probably our only, well, it's an important opportunity to get that next step of input.
It is not imminent.
All right.
And then can I ask one more?
Yeah,
question?
yeah.
I missed it, but was there any open narrative opportunity in the questionnaire? And were there some themes that came out of the any responses that were scripted, not often?
Yeah, there was an open narrative. There was both a question that was just kind of open-ended, like what if we left off the list here? And then within each category of aquatics, indoor recreation, youth, and education, there was an other category. And I would have to review that to see what the kind of trends that rose to the top were. But maybe we can forward that with the criteria for the sites.
Nice.
The politicians, we want to hear what the
Yeah,
people are saying. right?
Yeah.
Make sure staff understands what our next steps are, because if we wait until our next regularly scheduled meeting to discuss the criteria as a body, that is 2 months from now. So do we, like, I'm not really sure exactly what you'd like for staff to do. So
I think
is
it's
it
beginning of, end of August, beginning of September, right? Isn't that what we're talking about?
September, the third week in September is our next regular schedule.
Joint meeting?
In the joint meeting would be end of August, but that is for the senior center levy.
Well, we can tag on 15 minutes if we need to. So, I mean, right.
And so that meeting will be to have the board approve and discuss the criteria that's being applied to the site selection. And then later,
Yeah.
the
Come back to the sites
agency will
themselves.
actually
Yeah.
be able to submit their.
Does that work for folks?
Could we also notice and plan a special meeting to talk about? it?
Well, that's kind of what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
So
I would just like to tag on. I mean,
I just feel like there's probably, even after hearing this presentation, there might be some sites that you thought might have worked and now you're going, oh, there's no way this is potentially. But I'm okay with it being longer. I just want to make sure that Christine has exactly what she needs to know how to schedule out.
well, either tag on or a special meeting. I mean, I think there's an interest in actually making sure that we have an opportunity to talk.
So I
I
think
think the
it's,
site drives, ultimately, it's
It
gonna
does.
drive the politics and the potential if we want to do it. Site or
Exactly.
sites, I want to say, just
Yes.
the way we're shaped and how we're carved up here,
Yeah.
it's.
Yeah, it's pretty important. So,
And then we talk about parking, zoning, setbacks, each jurisdiction, which there's 3 cities, 2 counties, right? That could shape what we can do on the site. So some analysis of that and what might be beneficial to us could also be. Otherwise, if we need something different, we're asking for exceptions.
yeah, could we ask staff to just put out some dates? Either tagging on, you can ask, yes, no, would you prefer to tag on? Give us the date of the one that's proposed and, have some alternative
Excellent.
dates. Yeah, cool.
So that in that meeting, Christine, we discuss the site criteria, and then following that meeting, the actual sites will be brought forth and discussed.
All right. All right. So now we have a discussion and potential action regarding retention of a levy consultant.
so we wanted to, and we talked about this previously, I think kind of one-on-one with you all. And I wanted to bring it forth. We're probably right at the kind of cusp of we either need to do it, either we're going to retain a levy consultant or we're not going to. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And so I wanted to bring it back to you all to discuss as a full board. So we would like to consider retaining a levy consultant to advise on any future levies, whether it be senior center levy or possibly a community center levy. And so I have benefits of obtaining a levy consultant. We can identify competing levies or bond measures that are out there. they could develop strategies for future levies or bond measures, targeted communications, strategy and methods, and developed collateral or materials. And then also just gauging voter appetite, right? Is there voting fatigue at this point? Like how there's a lot of levies out there, right? On the next slide, I know we're fighting for time, so this is kind of a non-exhaustive list of activities that we would put into the RFQ. So just so you know, we would do an RFQ. It would go, we would put it out on the streets and then get responses. We'll bring those responses back to the board. And then after we do the interviews, we'll bring those back to the board, the ones that rise to the top. And then the board, like with the ARC, would choose which consultant they'll go with, and then we'll move into negotiating the cost for that. I've looked at some costing for levy consultants, just with the city and other bids that have went out there, and it's about 120 to 150 or 60, just depending upon the scope. So that's where do we have any questions about that? Or I didn't know if you needed any more information.
It's the time period. It's just like to have them on routine.
It's probably going to be next year. It'll probably take a few months for us to get the RFQ out, do the interviews, make an award, and then negotiate. I hopefully will be bringing a negotiated contract to the board in at the November meeting, and then we'll have them probably start January 1st, and then have them on for a year, and maybe add some language that says mutually agreed upon, rolling 1 year just as we need it.
Questions?
I had some concerns about this, and I think I still do. It's not my experience, but I'm only at the county. Maybe my city colleagues have more experience with learning consultant. We do this kind of stuff internally, putting the proposals together, kind of like we did the last time here. I will say that I'm a little uncomfortable with some of the scope of work that sounds political to me, and using public resources it feels a little campaigny. We have bright lines, and at least, I think we all know what those are. And some of the bullet points, maybe that's not intended there, but if were we to do this, I guess I'm struggling with the concept of this. I just, in this organization, and maybe we're getting fancy and big and more sophisticated now, but when we put the last one together, we was across the street, sat there, we costed out what we thought we needed to do. Rob Crones said, "You better have a penny because your costs are going to be up," and he was right or two. Then we just adopted it and went forward. We had wonderful partners on the senior center side who did the campaign. So I'm interested in understanding a little bit more why our staff can't help develop the program and cost it out and then decide. The levy consultant thing, maybe I can educate me a little bit how y'all do it, because that's a new concept to me.
We used a levy consultant for waterways and walkways bond measure, and it was fantastic. Now, that was something new. This is it, I think to me, where the levy consultant or the bond measure consultant would come into play would be around the community center. Actually, I mean, I am fine with this. I really see the value in a levy consultant. I mean, they know how to articulate what the program is. They know how to put it together. They know how to gauge what the voters have tolerance for. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of added value, in my opinion. But I also think we could theoretically get away without one. But for this, if we're keeping essentially the same scope, the same language and the same dollar figure, or pretty darn close. But I would lean in. I support this, but I could be argued out of it. I really think it would be important for the community center. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I only have dealt with the one city, but I think you'll find that we have perhaps less staff on retainer. And not necessarily just this area of expertise. I also think about who I know has spearheaded past results. I don't know who that sort of next generation of people take that lead is, right? I know on our council, we have 6 people with day jobs right now. And some people who still work other things part-time, and it's a lot. So I wonder if we have very set rules for our staff, and maybe something you can speak to, Becky, but I don't know if there's that capacity built into how much we staff NPRSA for that. I also don't know, and you're probably going to say no right away, but could the county lend staff to help with it?
Well, I was thinking about that. We worked kind of on the temporary loan deal. We have a pretty robust financial shop there, and I'd be happy to circle back and check on that. See if that's something that, I don't know, but we might be able to, for sure.
There's always a lot of rules, so I wasn't
Yeah.
sure.
The other thing was just how do we pay for it? Is the money that we use today, is that an authorized use of the bond?
It's a good question.
It's the voters authorized what we could spend it on, and it wasn't for, I don't think, the next levy. We need someone to look at that, because there are a lot of years that we had no money here. And then we passed that thing to do it anyway. So that was just the other question.
Or we share it among us.
Yeah,
That's another.
Oh, that's another way. On
Yeah.
the community center, where it's more complex, where we could use some help. Like, I think the county grant for that is probably, if it isn't flexible enough today, I could probably make it flexible enough to, provide for some consulting services to public.
So just to answer that, for the community center, the language is pretty flexible. It's for soft costs, so we can definitely use it for community center.
Let's see. I mean, if folks are okay, let's get the motion on the table and then we can continue discussion. Does somebody want to move?
Sure. Can we move as alternates? I don't know. I try not to vote and stuff. I think I just talk and otherwise don't.
I mean, if we don't have a member that's willing to make the motion, then that says something.
Yeah, I think
Do we not have any members interested in this?
I'm leaning with the concerns that Rod's got on this. So I have a hard time making a motion for this without discussion on it.
So I would be interested in having further discussion on this, and if that takes me making this motion to.
Moving doesn't mean
Yeah.
you're gonna vote, yeah.
Exactly.
So I will make the
There
motion
you
to
go.
authorize staff to initiate the RFQ
And I'll
process to
second.
retain a levy consultant.
And then we'll have further discussion. So, yeah. So did you want to have more discussion today, or we want to wait till we kind of
Can we go back to that list of the scope of work too? Thank you.
I'm curious, Rod, you said
So
My-
just.
my husband was making a comment that talking about things on a city level, and he was saying things on a city level are supposed to be nonpartisan. And when you said you saw some things that were political, I can't read all the fine print from here, but if you're seeing things, and I don't know what you meant by political.
I mean, campaigning side.
Campaigning.
Devise an election strategy was like big red alarms to me. Now, maybe it wasn't meant as that. Maybe it's like, well, what ballot should we do this on or whatever, but I didn't know if you're saying, well, who are the voters we want to talk to? How do you devise election strategy?
Yeah,
A
so
couple
this
other
is-
things got.
Yeah, to assess similar ballot measures. So what else is on this ballot? Do we have
That's
the,
kind of my
yeah.
purpose.
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Mhm.
But if you think that you have resources that we might be able to do it less money, and we're reinventing and fine tuning the wheel, we're going based on what we had done before. We're talking about the levy for.
This is it. I mean, yeah, Councilor, maybe I'm underestimating here, but I kind of thought we were doing really well collecting what's the next scope of work that has to be done, putting an estimate on it. And then we can figure out how many cents per thousand that would raise. That, and boy, I think our public spoke loudly last time that they like that approach, they support that approach, they support this place. If we're reasonable, it was like a nickel, you know, like I personally wouldn't feel comfortable spending $125,000, $75 to do that work, or 50. I mean, it takes a lot to get $10,000 of programming with me, you know, I just think for that piece, for the Councilmember Sherman, if we were to advance this community center pool idea, there's a lot more there that I feel we can use some help on.
And I would
think there's a place to pay for it.
I would love for them to answer the question of whether it could be on the same ballot. I think we've kind of talked about it, that there's more cons potentially than pros to having it be on the same ballot. I guess I'd like an opinion, but I've just seen a lot of value added. 4 cities, $40,000 seems money well spent in my opinion, but I mean, I can be docked out of that. Or wait, less than 30,000, even less.
So, if I may, I wasn't around for the last levy cycle, and I'm wondering, beyond just crafting the language and coming up with the numbers, what was the work that went into passing that we are not accounting for? I mean, you mentioned our partners at the senior center. Is that something that we can still rely on in this cycle, or do we?
Yes, Suzanne Greathouse, I think, was the leader on the volunteer side and activated the communities of interest, which was the seniors. And they put out signs and they communicated, and I helped her write, I helped her write a ballot, a voter's guide statement. She drafted it. I think maybe other people did too. It was kind of on a personal side, right? And they ran a little campaign, but we couldn't use any of these resources for that.
No, not for a yes campaign. That has to come separately. But yeah.
Just curious what other pieces might.
So there was a yes campaign. Susanna's still around, very engaged.
You don't show up to the meeting, might get volunteered again.
Let's get a pulse in the room. I mean,
Can I provide a
Yeah.
little bit of staff insight? So I kind of want to go back to, I think Amanda had asked an earlier question about the staff capacity. So I think what we're struggling with, and Christine, correct me at any time, is that staff not really knowing what the expectations or timelines are for the community center project. So for example, mentioning that the board may like to discuss whether that's on the same ballot as the 2025 senior center ballot. Like even hearing that, we believe that to place a community center bond or levy ballot or anything together, we're going to need a levy consultant. So I think if we knew more about that timeline and those expectations from the board, because I think we're trying to plan kind of for the worst case scenario and the most amount of work. And so we kind of need to flesh that out a little bit more to understand this timeline. I'm probably not making that as clear as I would like to, but
It kind of boils down to a value discussion, right? Like either it's going to be a volunteer. Some people are great at this work. Some people aren't, right? It's kind of a crapshoot. Like it's like, do you get someone who can handle this, who can work with a lot of different stakeholders and everything, right? Because a lot of this is what I would see like our city staff do for like in Snohomish County, we have to run an EMS levy because King County collects it and we get it. We don't do that in Snohomish County. We have to pay for it as a city of we all, shadow as a lawful EMS board and have little meetings to do that stuff. And so like finding a yes and no committee, our staff does that. I think that's a much bigger than 2 people and part-time Becky. So that's where I don't want to stretch the staff as we're trying to tackle all this stuff. I'm not against using volunteers, but it's also a matter of do you stretch someone and hope for the best? Do you pay somebody who does this for a living and you get a set, there's like a record of work there. So like if the person who did it last time is like, oh yeah, I can totally do it. It sounds like she ran the yes campaign versus this stuff. But
yeah,
that's kind of the thing, right? Is do you want to pay an expert to just come in and get it done? Or do you want to watch a lot of YouTube videos and try wiring your house and see how it goes? Like it's just kind of, that's kind of how I'm seeing it. And it's a good discussion, I just hesitate, worried about volunteers on something so important as paying operating and maintenance for the senior center, right? But it did work before too, to that.
Also, I think the senior center, citizen center is ready to go. The community center, we've got a lot of work still ahead of us, and and just the work itself may tell us whether or not we can put it on the same ballot or not. I'm thinking probably not.
Not, yeah, I mean, that's, I think, what we've been kind of operating, but it'd
The
be
little
nice to get
schedule
it.
that was on the slide, to me, felt like it was gonna go into late summer of next year, but you don't make. a
Oh,
ballot.
yeah, so for sure,
Yeah.
yeah, so maybe
Because
that's
that gave you
fine.
some relief. I think it would be hard to, I'd
print
be
that.
reluctant to put both on the same ballot, two
Mhm.
property tax
Yeah.
sites, and doing something that big, I think is just gonna, we're doing it in such a
We want to be
thoughtful
strategic
way.
with
Yeah,
the
that
ballot.
it's gonna
and
take
it-
some, yeah.
Well,
This one, I feel like we've got a pretty good scope of what's gonna have to be done here.
why don't we table that until we finish the scope discussion, maybe? I mean, because we do have more scope discussion.
That's good.
Let's do it.
So, so we have not voted on this. We do have a motion. Which might be problematic. Now that we made the motion.
You would, I would
So-
like to withdraw the motion for the time. being,
Sure.
if that's-
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, okay, so we have the motion withdrawn until we finish the scope discussion. And I have to leave at 6:15, so hopefully maybe we can finish that. I know Nancy.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, can we confirm for follow-up, Councilmember Dombowski is gonna confirm what the county could contribute as far as looking at resources for the levy? And Becky, maybe just, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but maybe just what staff could commit to with current staffing, right? Where we see gaps if we did tackle this sort of in-house. And then that will help inform the decision when we get there. Does that sound?
Well, I mean, staff is we're gonna deliver whatever the board asks.
It's
us to
true.
do. And it isn't, didn't we carve out, or didn't the board carve out 50,000 out of the current contract for the community center that's already available for
Mhm.
something? So, yeah.
For consultant, yeah.
It's just the community center work is taking up an extraordinary amount of time for NPRSA staff that we didn't really think about or plan for. So, but I do think it's most important for the community center conversation. But what's hard is those questions are coming sooner than we thought they would. And so it's like, I would say we could devote staff time to the senior center levy, but we have overlapping the community center ballot questions are already coming, and from many of you, to be quite honest. So it's like, oh gosh. You should also feel free to tell us, like, hey, we'll do that after this. Push back. Yeah. That's what I'm wondering if it's like a little bit of just a phased approach, like focus on the levy.
And I'm gonna request that since I have to leave, I'm gonna be very selfish. And can we have the Kenmore piece, maybe just switch the order of the, because we know about the crawl space. And we kind of go back. Hopefully we'll have time to.
So
Do all
we'll skip the
those.
maintenance right now and I'll move.
I mean, it's all related to maintenance, but yeah.
Yeah.
It just makes sense. Okay.
Okay, so at our last meeting, we talked about adding some kind of maintenance or doing something maintenance wise over at the Kenmore Senior Center, which is owned by the city of Kenmore. The board determined at that time that in the current levy, we wouldn't be doing anything. But I wanted to make sure before staff spends any more time or even reaching out to Kenmore and, taking up their staff time, do we want to consider putting anything potentially into the next levy that would, or any language into the next levy that would allow for us to do something at Kenmore?
So right now, I'm just to bring everybody up to speed. I mean, Kenmore facility is owned by the city of Kenmore. The programming is the North Shore Senior Center. It's an older building, small building. When we've talked about expanding, we have to go to multiple sites just to get enough, enough programming. So I think there's no appetite we've talked about to put significant dollars now or in the future into that building. But I guess I do want to make the case that if the senior center in Kenmore were to disappear tomorrow, that would be a big hole in the senior center programming, the North Shore Senior Center programming, which is us. I mean, the programming isn't, but the making sure that there are facilities in which to operate. So, and the facility assessment that was done 2020, I think it was 2021, something like that. I think you all have it. I mean, it showed, I think, 50,000 needed fairly quickly, and then I think it was 250 over a 6-7 time window or something. It comes out to 50,000 a year. And I guess what I'm curious whether folks, I feel like, the city's been 100% shouldering that, except for very small amounts from the senior center itself, because NPRSA has not considered that part of their world. So the senior center itself is shouldering a little bits. Kenmore is shouldering all of the rest. And it kind of feels like if we're trying to be one system, that maybe there could be some cost sharing, or at least a recognition that the Kenmore site is part of the system. So I guess I'm making my pitch.
Would Kenmore be willing to physically put that property into the umbrella and ownership of NPRSA?
I doubt that, but it would be more like that NPRSA would be contributing as, a contributor to a facility in the region. So if Woodinville had a site, it was programmed by the senior center, I would feel the same way. So it just so happens that this facility in Bothell is owned by NPRSA.
That's
Yeah.
And that's the distinction, is that this is owned by NPRSA.
Yeah.
So, and
It's mainly
and
to kind of keep it going. I mean, it would be I guess I would see it as some sort of articulation of contribution to the ongoing.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I know dollars are tight. How can you get assist wherever you can? I just feel that if we contribute to the program, now we've moved from taking care of a property that a program exists on to now being part of that program.
Well, I mean, I guess it's the same thing. It's taking care of the physical facility so that the programming can be maintained. I don't know there's EDA issues there. I mean, you saw the facility assessment. There's significant issues. So, anyway,
I keep thinking about the geography up here and making sure we're delivering value for constituents throughout the area. And it's a little weird because it's quite spread out, right? East and West. And I would lean in favor of some facility support for Kenmore, and if Woodinville had a site, same thing.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to go on the operational side.
No.
I agree with that. But it seems, in fact, that seems like a very modest request. I thought you might be interested in a larger footprint, maybe.
Well, that would be
maybe a
in the
precinct building
future.
or
In the
something.
future.
Or maybe not this thing.
Yeah.
You're easy. Deb.
Well,
that's an easy ask.
I mean, I just don't want it to disappear, I guess, and I feel like it's,
voters and voters in Kenmore looking at this might at some point, well, what is in it for me? I use the Kenmore Senior Center as branch. It's falling down. I'm not sure they'll make the distinction on who owns it or
Exactly. Right.
So I that's my thinking. My initial reaction would be, I don't think that's unreasonable. We should consider it. Maybe we should hear from Nathan on programming. I mean, also we have our population. It's aging. It's growing. It's going to be more demand.
I kind of have an opposite view on it. For me, it's tough with the NPRC not owning the building, putting money into a building that we do not own. that is owned by a city itself, I feel like it's the city's job to maintain their own building. As a council member in Bothell, if we had a building that we were loaning to a nonprofit to use, I would feel like it was on us to do that. The decision wasn't made by the NPRSA to use that building. It was and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, it was an agreement between the city of Kenmore and the senior center, which is a separate private nonprofit entity. So I know the building needs a lot of repair. I saw the photos and, there's some safety concerns there, but spending NPRSA specific money on a building not owned by NPRSA, to me, doesn't seem quite right. It seems like it's Kenmore's building. Kenmore should maintain that building.
I tend to agree with that. There's no ownership. Like it's not a residential landlord tenant thing, but you wouldn't put a new kitchen in your rental house because you don't own it. It's not going to come back to you. When you improve a building, it's because it's going to come back to you either in usage or in value or whatever it is. I do think if there's a way to bake in maybe matching dollars so that programming can be delivered, but we're not the only ones running the improvements, that's something I'd be interested in. And I want it to be for the other, like the facilities within the boundary district that the senior center leases, but like they lease this one, like kind of a matching thing. So if there was a building, you would go there. What, the Mill Creek one comes to mind or whatever. But so it's not, we're fixing this for Kenmore. And then we kind of have this weird, like, where does it end? Where does it start thing? Yeah. Because we should have, I think, clear boundaries that make sense, right? And it's awkward that NPRSA doesn't own the Kenmore facility, so now we're in this boat.
Yeah.
But I do wonder about just saying, okay, if we need 50 grand, like we have a fund baked into our budget, NPRSA will do half because we recognize that
Well,
we're
that's what I was talking about, is cautionary.
Yeah.
So,
Capital
yeah.
grants.
Yeah. Maybe I've been hearing too much about grants in my hobbies, but I'm just that might spread the balance for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have the same hesitations, but I also, you don't want to be like, well, you don't have a building, so yeah.
Yeah. Nathan, did you want to add to anything?
Our board supports the model this board's talked about, like the concentric circles moving out. And so we're really looking at this campus primarily, but we also recognize NPRSA was kind of formed to help the senior center with that capital lift. And we have a capital lift that's outside these buildings. The idea, our board discussions would align with the kind of matching idea that there'd be some funding from NPRSA that we could use to kind of do some capital minor things here and there in, an existing facility and new facility or office somewhere else too. So, and especially since it's a small part of that.
Awesome. So so I think in terms of direction, it sounds like we would need more discussion about what that looks like and maybe the amount of money that would be in the kitty. And, but am I hearing anybody say no halt discussion right now? I guess I'm not hearing that. Oh, sorry.
Well, no, I
don't know that. But she's just.
I'm processing here, but I do think that I like the balanced approach to it. And I think that if we could figure out a way of a policy moving forward for any facility within the North Shore Senior Center programming within the NPRSA that they are using. And I'm just thinking about that in terms of our next levy, that we specify that language baked into the next levy session so that we would have some flexibility in there. Yeah.
Do you feel like you have enough direction on this?
You good, Christine?
Yep, I think I got everything.
I apologize for believe yet again. I do have 6:30 commitments through September. So on Wednesday. So you and you're in good hands. So Rod will back you up. Thank you.
To back up. Okay, so back to 6A. So this is, we want to present the proposed capital repairs plan and budget for 2020, I'm gonna say 2025, 2026. For 2025. So this is just you all receiving the proposal, and then you all will actually approve this in at the November meeting, I believe, at our public hearing. For 2025, because we have the senior center levy and coming ahead at this point, we wanted to try to keep the capital repairs kind of minimal, just to free up time, staff time. So the health and wellness crawl space is repair has been on our kind of list to complete for the last 2 or 3 years. Just so you know, back in, I wanted to say for us, there was water in the crawl space, and it was a lot of water intrusion. There was a small repair that was made where they, I think, installed like a sump pump or a fan just to get the air moving down there. But the actual repair was just a Band-Aid. It wasn't a significant repair. And so we did a study on how was the water getting there. And so we found that groundwater was seeping into the crawl space. Looking at older reports and documents, we found that pre-construction, it was identified that the water table was about 4 to 8 feet. And so we think what happened is during construction, we got closer and closer to the water, right? And so it was over excavated at the footing locations. And so we kind of need to make a plan or put something in place that gets that water out of there, right? And so here's the recommended repair to alleviate the water. And it is to install an interior drainage system that would connect to the existing storm draining system. And so the red lines are existing, and then the blue lines are what we will be installing. So just to, when we're looking at the numbers here, this is work that's going to be done in confined space. The rate for labor is a higher rate of labor. But it's still under the threshold currently where we can run it through the JOC program versus going out to public bid, which will save us dollars. And so we're looking at doing that. Another thing that I want to mention is that talking with the senior center with Nathan, it looks like the kitchen in this building, there is a repair that we needed to make on the grease trap. The grease trap in the commercial kitchen is broken. It's not currently working. And it hasn't been a big issue because the senior center hasn't been utilizing the kitchen, especially through COVID. But now I hear that the need is ramping up. And so the number that I have is about 3 years old. It's $150,000 to replace the grease trap. But I am waiting for updated numbers on that. And so it's in the same area. I'm thinking we can just add it and hopefully gain some, the guys are already out there digging up the back. So we might as well add it and see if we can just bundle it and save some costs, mobilization costs and stuff like that. So I will bring that number back to you at not the next meeting, but yeah, I can do it at the next meeting. Hopefully I'll have the estimate by then. So that is that. And then proposed budget. So the levy consultant is obviously a question mark here that we have. So this is just our proposed 2025 budget. So we have our projected general funds starting balance, and then we have a estimated capital repairs. It's 450. And then probably adding about 200 for I would suspect it's probably 200 for the grease trap. And so we have Cornerstone, which is our architectural and engineering consultant, and then estimated administrative fees. So that's my salary, Becky's 10%, and then Barbara's full salary and benefits. And then we have projected revenues and ILA contributions. So we're looking at with that probably ending at 1.6. So we really wanted to make sure that we were, for some reason, knock on wood, do I have some real wood here? If for some reason the senior center levy does not pass, that we have some reserve for us to get on another ballot, so that we just have a little wiggle room there. And as we talk about building reserves, we didn't want to just deplete it all. So we wanted to go and ending this levy with a cushion, hopefully. So that's that. Any questions about that? I know it was really fast. Thank you.
Just really quick, to clarify something, you said the estimated capital repair costs would be an additional roughly 200,000 for the grease trap.
Hopefully, yes.
Is that factored in at the
That is not.
final numbers?
No.
It wouldn't.
It would be a 1.4. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Still better than you started the year.
Yeah.
I appreciate leaving some reserves for sure. It's important.
Okay, so moving on. So levy planning, the first couple of slides are just kind of snapshots of our planning. So this is kind of a document that we put together, staff put together, to kind of go over like capital repairs, and then the youth center, study planning, and then the senior center, and then our regular board meetings. So we are in July, so we have capital repairs still going on. We have the youth center survey 2 coming up hopefully in September. Most likely we'll push that back. And then for admin, I really would like, for going into the levy planning discussion, if we could have a kind of a finalized scope for what the senior center levy is going to look like, that would really help staff kind of move forward into the new year, especially with all of the, we have ballots. We're going to be on ballots in 2 counties. So we have to make sure that we're hitting all of, the requirements for, the pros and cons committees and all that. So planning, yes. Yeah. So we already kind of have a schedule for that, but really going into the year, into the new year, it would really help staff if we could have kind of a finalized scope. And then here's 2025. So you'll see the senior center levy. We have final language, committee ads, statements, and then elections. And then for the tenant agreement. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth, especially if the scope is going to change potentially. So we would like for the senior center board to have an approved draft tenant agreement so that we can start initiating negotiations with the senior center like Q1 of next year. So I believe our tenant agreement doesn't end until the end of 2025, I think so. But yeah, so just so that I would imagine there's going to kind of be a volley back and forth. So just so that we have some good time there. So these are just to note, so our minutes are action only. And so we want to make sure that we are capturing the incremental approvals or decisions that you all are making. So what we're going to do is start kind of an action summary. So you'll see that in your next agenda packet regarding the conversations that we have around the senior center levy conversation. So we're going to go through our past meetings and kind of capture those actions, and then we'll have them all outlined for you there. So just so you're aware that happened.
Just to clarify, like the formal actions are documented. in
Yes.
minutes, but it's really when this body kind of collectively gives staff direction. We'd like to start documenting that a little bit more clearly. We go back and watch
Yeah.
that videos a lot, but yeah, we think that would be helpful.
All right, so, oh, sorry, I just skipped that slide. So just to keep these questions in mind as we're going through these slides, what we're asking the board to kind of give us direction on is, one, should staff include maintenance in the next levy? Should staff explore any rent options for the senior center in the next levy? And then we kind of covered the third bullet, which is the Kenmore Senior Center discussion. And then there is also a request from the Senior Center Board to have a joint meeting the last week of August. So those are what we'll be asking at the end for you to give us your feedback on and direction. So the maintenance, so there was a lot of maintenance discussion at our last meeting. And so I just wanted to kind of frame where we left off. So the NPRSA has never contractually taken on any maintenance before. So I just want to make sure that that is noted, and that we currently don't have a reserve plan or budget strategy for maintenance. So these are things that we're going to have to build if we consider taking on any maintenance. And so the NPRSA would be contractually obligated, if we take maintenance, to prioritize maintenance over capital repairs. So if for some reason we take on maintenance of plumbing and the sewer line breaks or whatever, then we have to basically prioritize that repair and probably reprioritize our capital maintenance. And so that could definitely financially impact our ability to do any capital repairs in the next levy or all, and it could also affect any potential future levy rates that, we may need to increase. We may not be able to stay at the 4%, depending. And so the board approved staff to start scope considerations for maintenance specific capital components only. So that list that you all approved. So we've looked at that, and then the board discussed possibilities of maintenance in Kenmore. So we had that discussion already. So this is that list that we talked about. So since we met last, I have heard feedback from Nathan and the Senior Center Board, and they would like this list to basically dwindle down to HVAC maintenance only for the NPRSA to take on. So that's something we just discussed this yesterday. So it was news to me when I was putting together these slides, but that's something maybe that you all might need to discuss. So I think this would be a good time to kind of continue that conversation on your thoughts around taking over maintenance or not, or where we're at with that after you've got to digest.
I don't know who's chair.
I'm like.
Oh, I thought you got special duties. I thought we should have it do it.
I think that's in your job.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thank you. Nathan, could you walk us through the Senior Center Board's thoughts on that?
Sure. The senior center, so the board kind of wrote that letter to you. We kind of like the idea of having this discussion. The senior center board kind of looked at that list, and we're really open to the idea of NPRSA taking on some capital maintenance. But as the board kind of looks at this list, we're kind of, we kind of have this public-private partnership, right? NPRSA does the things they can do best. We're supposed to do the things that we can do best. felt like most of the scope on this list kind of fit pretty well solidly in ours. One thing that was way outside that the toughest for us to do is HVAC maintenance because it's so technical. So that's something we would have to outsource anyway.
And the rest of it, the board feels that there are good systems in place to manage themselves and not defer it, not, okay.
Right.
Questions? So, and is there, Nathan, an estimate on, what the HVAC maintenance would be?
Currently, we've already paid for a year of maintenance. We have, which was included in the contract when we installed the new HVAC units. I can bring back that number.
They are new, right?
Yes, they're new.
On both sides of this? And so Nathan, to clarify, are you saying that the senior center would kind of revert back to the model we've had, or continue with what we've had, basic maintenance and operations you guys would have? That's a leaky faucet, you fix it, that kind of thing. And we would continue this organization would continue on HVAC and then big capital. I guess that's kind of the person's term.
You had mentioned
Well,
sewer failing, or if it was a water main.
So that would be on because they're responsible for 100% of maintenance. The only thing we do is the capital repairs that the board approves on an annual basis. So if something drastic like that were to happen, then the senior center, Nathan, would have to come to the board and ask for help in the repair from the NPRSA.
I'll just, say off the record, but it's going to type.
It's recording.
Yeah.
It's a new world.
Yeah. But if it's something catastrophic like that, to me, that's on the landlord to take care of. And it's a catastrophic maintenance. When I think of maintenance, I think of things being cleaned or changing out or, changing a washer or that kind of thing. But when there's catastrophic failure of something, definitely the senior center should be like.
Unfortunately, the way the contract is written now, it is on the senior center to make all the repairs. And so if that's something that you all want to look at in the new contract, then we can add verbiage like that into the new contract. But as of now, all of the repairs and maintenance are on the responsibility of the senior center.
Well, I leave it open for discussion, but on how the others want to weigh in on this, but maybe you want to attach a dollar value to it. That there's a threshold or something. But my conscience says that there's a lot that as a landlord, we should be taking responsibility for, not in the maintenance, but when there's a catastrophic failure of something. It seems like it's a reasonable thing to look at us and say, come help with it.
Usually in a contract like that, it would be like the tenant is paying rent, right?
Right.
And so that kind of is, it's just all how we write it. So if we would want that language into the contract, then we can definitely look at that when we're negotiating or writing that contract. So.
Two questions. The first is, if I go back to our previous discussions, one of the things that you had brought up is the roof maintenance and desiring to keep that with the NPRSA because it helps with our warranty. How did that discussion land? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I'm fine with things staying like status quo. My only concern is just making sure that there are mechanisms in place to obviously hold the senior center accountable, records that need to be produced, just to show like, yes, we completed this maintenance. I would be fine with that, just knowing that the maintenance, especially we spent, 1.5 million on a roof, that was maintained. And so that, I think that is just kind of the partnership that we have to kind of develop and make sure that the expectations are outlined in the document, the next contract.
So,
Yeah.
I think it sounds like what we really need is to restructure the tenant agreement in a new way. And I think that it would be fine if both the tenant and us as the landlords say that we'll take the HVAC and you guys handle everything else. That sounds good. But I do think it has implications to the discussion that we just had concerning the Kenmore location. If we are saying we're not even going to do any maintenance on this building, then I think it brings up a question of why are we then funding maintenance in other buildings that we don't own? So I think that is a bigger policy discussion that we'll need to thread between A and B. Don't have an answer, but it does kind of.
Oh, it's great. You just on point.
Did you? Oh, I thought you had. I'll go. And so I think if the senior center wants to take on the bulk of those maintenance tasks in the lease, in the tenant agreement, it needs to be laid out, the schedule at which that will happen. However, you would get proof that it happened. And like, okay, this happens in January. By the end of January, the status of it will be shared with NPRSA, right? And if it doesn't happen within a certain time period, and I'm not going to make up numbers because I barely do this for my own house. I don't want to guess the time frames, but then the senior center, like, we will schedule it and they will pay for it, right? Like there's just an accountability there so that all these new wonderful systems get the maintenance they need to last as long as possible. And to me, that's a balance of do the maintenance, like whatever works, but also protecting this public investment into this asset for all of us. I think just there's good faith and there's like, let's just, trust but verify. We'll just have receipts and then we're good. And I think with catastrophic stuff, totally agree. If there's a tornado and Dorothy's, not in Kansas anymore and the wall's gone, that's one thing. If it's due to a lack of maintenance, then that gets really hairy. Because we don't want to necessarily get in a situation where things aren't taken care of, and then we're kind of constantly swooping in with saving the day with taxpayer money. I want to avoid that too. Hurts to say. I just want to make sure we're spending wisely because it's not easy to come by as a consumer sometimes.
No. I was just.
Echo what you said. My thought was it's incredibly important this be done and it be done on schedule in a timely manner, having the ability to verify on a schedule, produce invoices, produce reports of what was done so we can verify. We have to keep public funded things in proper conditions. And I know that hasn't always been the case in the past. And I want to make sure that we have the ability to follow up and verify and ensure that's done. So if the senior center wants to keep it, no concerns with that. I'm glad staff is aligned with that as well. So I'm in favor of that as long as it's built into the contract that we are verifying and ensuring that it's actually done.
Can I answer a question?
Sure. Would you introduce yourself?
Say again?
Would you introduce yourself for those of us that don't know you and for the record?
My name is George John. I'm a property owner in King County, and I use the senior center. So I was just curious, have these inspections ever revealed anything?
We did have to, I know we replaced quite a bit of building components over especially this levy cycle. I think it was, if I recall correctly, bigger to have new systems. There's a lot of building envelope repairs, the pedestrian bridge. So at some point there was an inspection that said, this is getting dangerous, right? And some of that, my understanding, as I just a voter at the time, I wasn't on the city council or anything, Snohomish County, there was some that was just due to age, right? This facility was built in the early 80s, and some of it was due to a lack of maintenance. So the accountability is to make sure that we're all on the same page, right? So that we don't have to have a really tough discussion in my mind later on about did it happen, did it not happen? Because once there's an issue, we don't want to be casting doubt. We just want to handle it. So that kind of keeps us on a good path. That was my intent of saying it.
Yeah, just to kind of speak to our discussions at the senior center, our interest here is not like, our interest is trying to make sure the voters are getting the best value for their dollars. So our board's discussion is centered on what's something that, does this feel like it fits better in, do the voters get a better deal if this sits here or if it sits there. And, there's some things on that list that we fit, however, and so part of that is, if the process ends up being that we do the work on a schedule with an onerous documentation process that has to be continually updated, that might not be the best fit then, because that's creating a big process that's really expensive to maintain. But I mean, from our perspective, if the contract said, for example, that all maintenance has to be done to make sure that no warranties are violated on a regular basis, and a proof will be, and documentation will be submitted for that. And that feels like that's maybe a right fit. And so we're still open to more discussion on this, but again, our value driving this is what's the best deal, what's defensible, most defensible to others.
And Nathan, would the senior center take care of the costs for that regular maintenance?
Yes.
So you can basically continue the arrangement slowly.
Right.
And I think, putting on my own real estate lawyer hat, there's contract terms that are fairly standard in the industry that you require the occupant to maintain facility in good order and repair. And maybe rather than a schedule, or that might be hard to do on a facility this complex, we might have an annual audit by a building professional, kind of what we did to assess, and then they can have a dialogue. What have you done this year? And we can get a report back. Hey, was the inspector identifying issues that aren't being handled? That might be something to think about in terms of a feedback and accountability loop. And I'm with the members who indicated that I think we should continue responsibility as the facility owner for kind of major things. A big commercial water pipe breaking, I'm okay fixing that. Typically, a landlord in these situations, there's an absolute triple net lease where the tenant handles everything. Often they're modified. It's not unusual for a landlord to take care of a roof, HVAC, and so that doesn't strike me as unusual in a kind of a setting like this. And it's all, I think we all have to balance out we have them providing this program in a facility we provide, they don't pay any rent, but it's a public service too, right? So we kind of have this arrangement. And I think also our voters approved these dollars knowing that, they didn't, that's been the deal for 30 years. And they didn't say, no, we don't want to give you a property tax charging rent, which would have been another, approach. I think they've said they like the service. So that's important. But big stuff, I don't, either unanticipated or big stuff in the ordinary course that needs to be replaced because it's the end of its useful life. I think that's our responsibility.
Is there, again, I've got a condo and a house. I don't know a lot about commercial property maintenance, but is there a type of building inspector who could just come once a year and provide that audit on all of these different systems? Because I know that these get pretty complex with commercial properties and commercial.
I think we had that kind of expert when we were putting the program together, right? We've had the folks come in and do that. And they have to have some subspecialties like HVACers.
Yeah, that's the part. It's just.
So when we created the current tenant agreement, there is an exhibit A that I attached to that agreement, and it has a list of building components with the basically recommended cycles of maintenance. And so I think just identifying those, and maybe it's not a monthly thing, but maybe it's a quarterly or a semi-annually. All we would do is receive either the invoices or the report that an inspection was done, and then we file it away, check it off and file it away. So it's not like a huge process. Really, we just want to make sure that it is done by a licensed professional, the things that need to be done by a licensed professional, and then and that it was just complete. So I don't want it to get too convoluted, but yeah, it's really just the senior center providing us with the document that it was completed. So, and that's already kind of baked into what we're doing. I know that, I guess, concerns have been brought up before. Nathan was having a tough time filling the facilities position. we're getting documents in. We're still not 100% there, but it's better in the last 6 months to a year. So, so we're working on it. But I think that we could both do better at trying to make sure that we're, especially for compliance. We have to remember that we get audited. So the next audit so we're doing a financial audit, right? We're going to start a financial audit this year. And we're meeting the threshold, our revenue is meeting the threshold where we have to do not only just a financial audit, but also a compliance audit. And so that's going to be really important, us tightening like our records management and making sure that we're getting those documents and we have them per the contract, just because it's going to come up and we should be making sure we have, those records. So
Is there agreement between NPRSA staff and the senior center about which of these items requires a licensed professional?
yes, that's in the exhibit. Yep.
Gotcha. Just making sure, because I remember you mentioned saving money and I just,
Yep.
in the right places.
Yep. So we're working on it, but I just in the next we can tighten that, making sure we're just fine combing it. So
I think you have a sense of the board's view, which is what I heard, general concurrence with this approach. We'll ask you if it's appropriate as staff to work with Nathan to work on any revised language. Yes.
Cut you off, but I just have a comment that I really need to share. As much as we'd like to apply industry professional standards to this situation that we have, it is a very unique situation that we have. And so what I would like to share is that in the past, historically, it's been difficult sometimes for this board to really hold the senior center accountable. And it's just all before our time. And that's not surprising. It's because of the arrangement that we have. Nathan and his operation here is a very important community partner. No offense, y'all are elected officials, right? So what I want to share is if we're really going to protect the
None of us ran for this board.
what I need to share is if we do this, and there potentially comes a time where we're not meeting obligations, either of us, and we need support or help or some really courageous conversations, we have to have those conversations because all of us are responsible for maintaining these buildings. And I'm just concerned that there's some practices and some behaviors and norms that all of us as a group have that we need to change. It's not just putting it in the contract and saying, here's the checklist, because historically that hasn't been successful for us. So maybe it's working on some of that organizational culture type work where we get a little bit more comfortable holding each other accountable in both ways. And so I just wanted to share that before we move forward.
And would you recommend kind of a periodic report to this board following kind of on the maintenance topic? I mean, what are the tools you're recommending?
Actually asked for that, and I believe a board member has asked that we add a recurring maintenance update on the agenda from the senior center, and we've not yet done that. So I think you're right. I think that's what it is. It's processes, and it's us all kind of agreeing that it's not personal. It's just let's bake it into the process so that there's reporting and it happens at a predictable cadence. And if perhaps, some item isn't being completed, then we know sooner rather than later.
Well, and this work can't rely on good interpersonal relationships.
Yeah.
That's not defensible if it gets real questionable, right? And so that's my thinking in trying to just write down what the expectations are and how we'll account to that, because then it doesn't become, oh, Amanda's in a bad mood today. It's I need to do this because I agreed to it and I'm going to do it. And I think it's also a way to keep those interpersonal interactions and any other pressures that anyone feels out of the discussion because we've agreed on these terms, and it's not, a handshake agreement. I get training at work that if you have a contract, everything needs to be the contract. There's no handshake agreements. There's no off paper stuff. It's all in there and it protects everybody. And if we all do our part, it's not an issue, right? But if there is an issue, let's say we're all replaced and it's people who hate the senior center for some reason that get elected, right? It's all in the agreement. There's no risk there.
But so this is heading toward kind of the renewal of the agreement. You're asking, if I understood it, for some guidance on this issue. Do you sense that you
Yep.
have some?
Yeah, I think the feedback is good so that we can set up the conversation for the joint discussion with the senior center. So what I'm hearing is that we're okay with exploring the senior center taking on the majority of the maintenance and us keeping the HVAC, and that we need to talk through some contractual processes and to put in place to make sure accountability is there.
Yeah,
for both.
two-way
Right,
accountability.
yep.
And I would hope that Nathan, you could take back to the board, that it's not that board, it's not anything that's teaching, it's just, we all want to be on the same page and have that really clear.
I just say, I see a lot of value in it because they're here every day. They see when something needs to be fixed, they're motivated to fix it. I will say, I think probably some of the neglect might be too strong a word, but the deferred maintenance that occurred in the year was from a much leaner time and budgets. I would say generous voters in King County have put seniors into our veteran seniors human services levy, which has meant, I think, a lot more money for you. No, something more. It's millions. There's a lot. What I'm seeing is a lot more money coming. So maybe that's helpful. I assume that there's a way to pay for it. That's that's a big change economically that we're talking about from what you were asking us to do, not from what but you were asking us to take on those things.
Yeah.
So the next slide is, so there were some rent options that were brought up, some rent discussions or fees that were brought up at the previous meeting. So I wanted to bring that, but it sounds like that is kind of a non-factor at this point.
By show of hands, is there any board member that wants to discuss charging the senior center or any kind of rent or required compensation for use? So just to see, we should discuss it. It's okay to discuss it. Who wants to discuss it? Not forever, but for now, Nathan, you're clear.
And we already, we had the Kenmore conversation. And so, oops, I think I went back too far. No, I didn't.
Did you need any authorization to proceed on the water issues of crawl space? Do you have what you need?
Yep, we're good on
You're
that.
good on that.
Yep.
It's going to be in the budget.
Yep, you all will vote on that. Yep, in November. Yep. So the NSC board requests a joint planning session for the last week of August to discuss the scope of maintenance for future levy. And then I kind of already said that I would like to have a approved draft of the tenant agreement by the Q1 of 2025, so that we can start negotiations with the senior center. So it looks like, so we're actually not planning to include maintenance, just the one item, which what's nice is we already paid for annual contract. So I can bring back the numbers and add that into the 2025 budget. So we can do that. And then rent was a no, boom. Kenmore is a yes on finding out more information of what that looks like and continuing discussion, sounds like.
And the cost sharing option.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I think,
That's not limited just to Kenmore, but maybe it's cost sharing.
Yeah.
That, say Woodinville started something, or Mill Creek said, hey, we can use a little room. So, something that would treat everybody.
I think there's also a discussion to be had about Mill Creek being outside the NPRSA boundaries. So is there anything unique that we want to consider in using NPRSA tax dollars outside of the district, right? So but at the same time, it's not like if you live in Buffalo, you just stop at the city limits and don't go do stuff. So it's
been good.
It's worth talking about.
When you look at the map, it's a good reminder. There's a big part of North Shore.
Yeah.
okay, so we will continue those conversations.
Can I add one clarifying thing or check with the board on the maintenance? I think where you were saying was no maintenance, but in putting this new levy together, I kind of want to channel Councilmember Zorn's a little bit, that there could be some big items that are unexpected that we ought to perhaps have a slug in there for. The water main breaks, the sewer main collapses, that.
Right.
Who knows? It's 6 years, right?
Rainy day fund.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's the reserve plan. When we start putting that together, I think that makes a lot of sense, and just making sure we have some verbiage in the tenant agreement that would identify, or start a process that.
Because I think we might end up in that territory. I would be okay with an objective dollar amount rather than a subjective things, right? You know, stop. You all work what you come up with, what's best, but I think there's going to be some money.
It's just a matter of time.
All right. Yeah. And we do have, so staff has been working on long-term levy strategy planning. So we've already kind of outlined things that we have done in this levy. We'll need to readdress some of these things like 3 levies from now, right? So we've already kind of started making spreadsheets that identify that and strategizing better. Okay, so reports, we're going to go really fast.
Yeah, we'll go really fast. It'd be helpful. I'll talk to several offline to understand. We never kind of finalized what our maintenance update would look like for this group. I think a maintenance update probably makes more sense as a written instrument than me trying to present on it. And it's not very exciting stuff. It's like, hey, we had TK out to maintain the elevators. We did the hood cleaning and Austin Irrigation, got the irrigation system up and running, and we found the water leak and we fixed it. So, I mean, it's not a very fun thing to report on. I always like reporting on the more fun things, like our 5K race is coming up on August 3rd, and we have a health and wellness fair that you all should come to on September 19th. So we'll find the right balance for those, but more to come. I mean, I have our records for like maintenance since we last met. We can develop a report, but let's find the right thing so that you feel you can get a glimpse of what we're doing without putting you to sleep with it. Like I'm looking at our maintenance report from the last 3 months, and it's about 8 pages long. I don't know if you all care. So we'll find the right.
Question on that.
Yes.
For the events, can you email those to us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I got 2 calendars I got to maintain. It's real hairy, so that
Yeah.
really helps.
All right, that was all your report? Okay.
You said go fast.
Okay, that was all right, so we have our senior center and health and wellness center envelope repairs. So we have mobilized here at the senior center, the health and wellness building. They're doing prep work, pressure washing, getting ready to do the exterior. We are adding, I'm looking at potentially adding like a signage package to the project, so we can get some updated signage on these buildings and at the corners. So we're working on that, and we've kind of identified some small vegetation management that we can, a lot of the trees here are overgrown. And so we're looking at possibly starting that, especially since we have to do a little prep work for envelope painting anyways. So we're doing that. The pedestrian bridge, we had a pre-construction meeting for that. Unfortunately, the color that we chose for the handrails is a special order. So it hasn't changed the cost, but it has changed the timeline. So we've ordered the powder coating, but it is like I think it's like a 10-week wait. What's nice is that we can get this envelope stuff done, get that contractor off, and then the handrails are not like a weather dependent kind of situation. They're taking off a panel, replacing a panel. So looking at probably October in that. So we might hit, a little rain, but it's okay. I would rather us really focus on the envelope, especially while we're having really great weather. And then, like I said, but mentioned before, we are having a financial audit to begin in August. The state, someone from the state auditor's office will be sending you all an invite to the intro introduction conference. And so you can
I've done that before.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can join us or you can decline. It's fine. They were gonna come to this meeting, but we just had so much. I was like, can you just do it with staff? And they're like, well, we have to invite everybody. So you'll see it. Don't feel obligated to come. Staff will take care of it. So and I think the only thing that I need your yay on is us planning the joint board meeting the last week of August. So is there a day that works best for your board?
We wanted to see if the Tuesday or Wednesday works. But
You have it.
Yeah, Bothell City Council meets on Tuesdays, the first 3 Tuesdays, sometimes.
Not August.
so
Okay, my
Yep.
we were looking at August 27th or 28th.
So that's a Tuesday and a Wednesday.
That Tuesday is very free. Should come.
Okay. Does anyone else, does everybody agree on Tuesday, the 27th?
I've got something Tuesday.
We can also have it, can we have it during the day or are you?
Sure.
No.
What's
Probably 4:30 or 5 would be the earliest that we could. do
that works.
Or does Wednesday work better?
We already have our meetings on Wednesday. So.
Yeah, Wednesday work. I mean, they both work for me, but I'm not. Yeah.
Wednesday's open for me.
So it sounds like the 28th will work.
Right? After we invite y'all,
Okay.
we might have pickleball afterwards. If we get that.
So are we thinking at the same time, 5 o'clock or 4 or what works best?
5 is a little easier, but
Okay, 5 p.m.
We'll just go with that.
All right, we will get that posted. All right, this is out of my pay range.
On behalf of the board, let me thank you as our staff for, we put a lot on you. You're working very hard. It's uncharted territory. The results that are coming back demonstrate the thoughtfulness in that meet and what you have put into scoping out, particularly on the Youth Center project. There's so just thank you all for that, those here and online, and thank you also for your work with the Senior Center. As you know, this is a very unusual relationship, and I just have a high degree of confidence that you've got great, capable people working on it. You've got a lot of issues. It requires a real breadth of knowledge and expertise to do what you're doing. So for those of us who this is a secondary or third position, we just thank you because the work doesn't happen without you doing it then. So give Germany a round of applause for our students. And let me also add, I want to go, but Nathan, we are very appreciative of having you here, just to give to the community and how you bring energy and knowledge and experience to running the Senior Center and professionalism. We've all benefited from that too. And so join me around. Oh, is there anything to the good of the word?
Senior Center does take volunteers for the fun run, which is on August 3rd. I'm not coordinating, but
It's an excellent good of the order. Wonderful. With that, we okay to adjourn? If I can be included as a yes vote on the consent agenda, I would appreciate that. With that, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Deborah's not allowed to be early again.
I didn't actually. I didn't hear the